Well, how about if we just get started in a semi-traditional way, and I'm taking this all very seriously. My intention, I mean, God bless you for being here on Sunday morning, first of all. And, so my intention here is to convey some information to you that you can actually use immediately without having to get terrifically involved with your birth chart if you don't already know that. Because my approach is that I'm a practical metaphysician. That's the way I put it. So if you'll bear with me, I'll sit down with you. This is great. So my intention is to, sometime in the near future, if you don't know your rising sign, this is not your sun sign or even your moon sign, but your rising sign, I know how to get that information to you. So I'd just like to see a show of hands. Who actually does know what their rising sign is?
In Vedic Astrology.
In Vedic or in...
Well, in either system, actually, because we can convert. Yeah, okay, well, that's pretty good. So we'll get back to that. But first of all, I want to start with a mantra to Ganesh. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so if everybody knows that, it's... This is a very practical piece of information for you too. To do anything that needs focus by invoking Ganesh. And that's done by simply saying, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. So, it's up there in tiny letters. So you want to do that with me?
Yes.
Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Okay, so we've invoked the remover of obstacles. I'm counting on Ganesh. I count on Ganesh for a lot of different things. So actually, if I stopped right now, you would really have some valuable information. I mean, even if I stopped right now, that didn't come out the way I meant it. The Ganesh mantra, and it's not a religious thing, it just greases the wheels. So now you know the Ganesh mantra. Actually, I worked with, yes?
Is it Ganapataye A or Yay?
Either Ganapataye, yes, it's Ganapataye
Yeah.
Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. So that invokes the patron saint of astrology. Ganesh has a very good memory, which is a good thing. So here's another really important point, that the stars have definite powers and they emit distinct influences. So here's what I mean. So Zevi wanted me to make to comment between to compare and contrast Western astrology. Probably everybody here knows your Western or your sun sign, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's put out there in the popular press by simply saying you are born between March 21st and April 20th, and so therefore you are a certain sign. Mm-hmm. So, but the way I think that this star patterning system is really valuable because it acknowledges the fact that there are 12 different main constellations, actually star clusters, star patterns in the sky, and those star patterns actually have power. If there is a planet in front of a star cluster, as opposed to a sign, there's a little finger floats around that, there's a very distinct influence there. So, without getting into the astronomy of it too much, this is an important concept. Because the word astrology, aster means stars, and ology means the logos, the wisdom of star patterns. It's a simple concept. But through the course of the millennia, the things have shifted backwards. Let's just leave it that way. You don't care about the mechanics of this. No. I mean, I doubt that you do. That's a technical slide. But things are, about 3/4 of the time, a person's sun sign will not be their actual constellational pattern. This actually makes a difference. So that's one important concept. And another one is that the time of day you were born is paramount. So, because this defines what your rising sign is, or your lagna, as Zefi would say, your rising sign. So, aside from this lady from Ireland here, do most people know what time of day they're born?
No, what
Yes.
if you don't know
I know.
and you can't find out?
I want to know.
I was born in Japan, and my mom didn't remember what time that I was born, and it's not on any kind of a birth certificate or anything.
Yeah.
The same in Ireland, they didn't record the time.
No, so I have no
Crazy.
idea.
I didn't record my time.
Plus, Japan is a different time zone. than
Well,
the United
that's
States.
time zone.
Oh.
Yes, it doesn't matter where you're born. This
But
is
if
a
you don't
global
know,
influence.
what do you do? if you
Well,
don't-
there's a technique of figuring that out. It's sometimes it can be very simple and sometimes it's a little complicated. But I mean, one does actually have to go to a competent Vedic astrologer to find this out. You go through life events, and I mean, there's ways of doing that. This can be done,
Okay.
but most people can figure out the time of day that you were born. I'm going to pass out, if you give me your email address, I will calculate that for you. If you give me your email address on this little piece of paper right here, and you put down your birth time, write legibly, I'll write back to you and let you know what your birth constellation rising is. Because this, well, as it says right on this slide here, this is the essential factor of knowing who you really are. So if we were sitting on a bar stool in Mumbai, hey, if we were sitting on a bar stool in Mumbai and somebody said, "What's your sign, baby?" I doubt they would say that. If they did, you would tell them your rising sign. Because then a competent person would know exactly how your worldview was oriented. So, for instance, Pamela here in the front row and I are both Gemini rising. So she's got a sense of humor, she can multitask, and Avani is Scorpio rising. So life is a little more serious. There's a lot of passion and she wants to figure out how to, well, we know about...
I want to figure out how to get some passion in my
Let's get to Scorpio Rising.
Yes, well, that would be her normal style in the most essential way is the passionate water element of Scorpio rising. As it turns out right now, there's the temporary influence of having Saturn in the sky is in Scorpio right now, and that's a bit of an oxymoron, but that sort of maybe damps that down a little bit. But back to my point that your rising sign is the most important factor in your chart. Because the word horoscope actually means, hora is hour. That's not too much of a stretch, right? H-O-R-A means H-O-U-R in English. And scope means looking at something, like scoping it out.
It's
So
Greek, just by the way.
By the way.
it is.
By the way,
Right.
You have two Greeks here. You Greeks or something.
Yes. Yes. The horoscope, I guess it would be horoscopo spelled with a K. So it means actually scoping out the hour that you were born. So, yes, because, and this changes approximately every 2 hours throughout the course of any given day. This is seasonal. It depends on what time of the year you were born. There's a lot of different factors here, but that's doing real astrology, is knowing what your rising sign is. So, now the moon is obviously, the moon is the most important planet in anybody's chart. So I know that you heard a lot about the moon yesterday. And so the moon, maybe you know this, stays in a constellation for 2.5 days. So this is a really important feature in your chart. You know, the sun stays in a sign for a month. So basically we say a big deal. It can't be such a strong influence if it stays there for a month, but the moon moves every 2.5 days within the course of the month. The moon enters a different constellation. So because the moon represents your emotions, do you all know that? You really do know that? I'm so impressed.
You've been trained.
Well, I know, that's why I'm asking. I don't really know who I'm talking to. I don't want to talk down to you, but I do want to emphasize that the reason that the moon is so important because it represents your emotions, your emotional need. It's an aspect of your personality, but it also represents your habitual state of mind, your habitual state of mind. So there's 12 general moon types. And then even within that 2.5-day period that the moon is in any given constellation, it's also in an even more smaller star pattern. It's called a nakshatra. That lasts for about a day or so. So there's 27 of those. There's really 27 different moon types. So it goes beyond the scope of our discussion today to go into what these moon types are. You'd have to already know what your nakshatra is. But that's something to find out about yourself. Not necessarily for me. Laura's husband is a world-class Vedic astrologer. He lives in Sedona. He could help you out with that. There's a lot of free Vedic astrology on the internet. You could probably find out about that. Or else, that's right, I'll tell you if you give me your email address. So it's my intention to be useful here. So knowing what your moon sign is and your rising sign, I think will take you quite a way. And then we live in such a wonderful modern age that if you Google what your moon sign is, you can find a lot of information about that. I mean, accurate information. Of course, having said that, there's a lot of bosh and piffle on the internet, but I think that there's less erroneous information about astrology if you look at it from the Vedic point of view. I've practiced astrology as a profession for over 40 years. That's the only job I've ever had. And when we first started out in the late 60s, early 70s, God, that's over 40 years, isn't it? But who's counting? So, back in the day, here in the West, that's the only thing we were exposed to was Western astrology. And, you know, it works. I mean, astrology is so brilliant. It works both in the Western version, too. And I'm not diminishing the value of Western astrology. Western people can grok Western astrology pretty well. But having practiced both of these side by side, where my actual mortgage payment is made based on my accurate predictions, if I would say that, you know, if you're interested in astrology, find out about Vedic astrology. I guess that's why you're here. So, because the stars emit a distinct pattern. So, back to the moon. Oh, I like that quote at the bottom. I hope you can actually read it from back there. And if you can't, I don't know why you can't, but it says,
You can
it's,
do a full view on the screen.
I can't see.
well,
I don't know how
it's
we can do that.
Yeah,
Go to view, or
How you see is what you
Do you
get.
have a slideshow of your thing?
do you know how to
Yeah,
do
well, that's what
that?
I'm
Oh,
looking
yeah, there, it's a
Can I have a-
slideshow up
can I-
on top.
There we go. Perfect.
view what?
And then you do from current slide.
Click on this.
All the way over to the left.
Bonnie, can you help me?
Second to the left.
Right here, it says from current slide.
Oops.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
There we go.
Okay, that's what.
And then you
Oh.
can use, Charlotte, then you can use the arrows. If you use the arrows on your computer, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. This is a team sport. Astrology is a team sport. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you, my team. So, but what it does say there is how you see is what you get. The moon represents how you see the world. And obviously that's a very important thing. If you knew what if your moon is not functioning well, then you are going to see your environment as a difficult place, or that the universe is threatening, or, you know, whatever else that is. I mean, it may be your style to look at your surroundings that way, but as it turns out, the moon is very important. I guess I've made that point. But have you? There are old etchings of the Roman senators. In their, you remember, maybe you've seen those. The senators are in their togas, and they're holding a staff. They're holding a stick, and on top of that stick, there's a symbol of something. There's a symbol for something, and that symbol is their moon sign, so that people across the Senate floor know how to deal with that person.
Oh,
no kidding.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really
We
is.
should do that with t-shirts.
Yes. I am a Scorpio moon, look out, perhaps. Oh no, I devolved into a cliche, and I'm so sorry about that. You could have a Scorpio moon conjunct Jupiter, that would be a very different effect. But it wasn't that long ago that every educated person knew what their moon sign was. And even reading references in Shakespeare, there was those sorts of references, being born under certain stars. So, a bright moon is a good thing. Being born close to the full moon is a good thing. And I know that you heard yesterday about the fact that the moon is the basic representation of the most essential feminine principle. So the idea is to find out what your moon sign is and to be okay with whatever that is. Now I'm veering off into another really large concept here, but in a sense, astrology measures planetary placements and measures things in a very cosmic viewpoint. You're looking at what was going on in the solar system when you were born, and even beyond the solar system into the influence of the fixed stars. So anything that you see, everybody's chart is just fine for who they are. Being comfortable with what your style is, I think that's the big message of astrology. It actually helps you define what your style is. That's just my terminology. I hope that doesn't sound sloppy, but it's like, remember back in the day when you had your colors done? Most of you are too young to remember. You're a winter, you're a spring, something along those lines. You pick the best colors for yourself. Well, it's the same with astrology. If you can align yourself with your own moon sign and the conditions of your moon sign, there's a lot of variable factors here. I think that it allows you to be happy with who you are and not compare yourself with anybody else and just fit in however you can. Fit in with yourself is the concept here. So the moon is very important. Now, I know that you heard yesterday too, I think I heard, that somebody said the planets are masculine except for the moon and Venus. So I'm going to adjust that a little bit. The ancient Shastras say that, now don't freak out, that all the planets are masculine, but all the constellations are feminine. So, now, all systems are good. Okay, it is true that the moon has dominion over the feminine experience of home and family and childbirth and food and emotions and things that are considered to be typically more feminine than masculine. And it's true that the planet Venus has to do with relationships and love and affection and bonding and the ability to form equal relationships. Yes, Venus is the master of that concept. But the idea here is that actually, one of my opening slides is that the constellations actually have an influence. There is power. The planets actually get their power from being in front of any given feminine constellation. It's all okay, masculine, feminine, all of that is all, I'm not making a case for the dominion of one over the other. I'm just saying that, actually I thought that worldview makes sense to me. I'm looking at these sorts of things. So, does anybody want to question that? Or, no? Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. Well, you may actually be a different sun sign than you think you are. So that's a freestanding statement. So the idea here is that if you were born before around the 15th day of any month, your sun is actually in the preceding constellation.
Say that again.
If you were born on, say, the 10th of whatever month, your sun sign is actually in the preceding constellation. If you think you are an Aries, you're actually really a Pisces.
Wait.
Now,
Can you say that one more time, please?
so if you are born before the 15th, around the 15th day of any month,
Okay,
your sun is actually in the preceding sign.
I see.
So the Aries is typically considered to be the first sign of the zodiac. So if you were born before the 15th of April, in this case, your sun is actually in the constellation of Pisces. And I'm not trying to blow your minds with that, but the options that you have. Do you care if I have the microphone on or not? No.
We do for this, for the video, we need it, Charlotte. Sorry.
Ew. Is it
Stop
better?
touching it.
It's good.
You're fine. Stop touching it.
Thank you. Okay, so here's where this is what the sky looks like right now. And there's a lot of different players here. How interested are you in this? Not necessarily.
Yeah, because we don't know.
Okay. So
We
what's
listen to
happening?
everything you've got to say, because you're just interesting. You are interested.
God bless you. You got a sense, I'm glad you have a sense of humor about it. Okay, so this brings the larger point here that the timing is everything. Okay, timing is everything. And in this particular chart, again, the rising sign is so important. As it turns out, right now, the constellation of Scorpio is rising. So this is an appropriate time for a metaphysical discussion. So, because that's what Scorpio is associated with, right? The constellation of Scorpio is very interested in proper use of power for self-management. It's always about self-management with Scorpio, or self-mastery. So, so that's a general statement. Scorpio is rising right now. We're looking at something that's occult. Astrology is just, occult simply means hidden. Look, the people you're a rare group to be interested in astrology, let's be honest. It's an occult science, it's a sacred science. So the fact that we're talking about energy patterns is appropriate for Scorpio rising. Now, there's a modifying factor that's going on right now, because the planet Saturn is traveling within the constellation of Scorpio right now for about another year and a half or so. So Saturn is the planet of delay and delay. So we were supposed to start at 9:15. We didn't start till 9:30. So yay, Saturn is already operative. We expected that. And so this is actually kind of serious work that we're doing here. I mean, I hope. I'm taking it seriously, even though you're laughing. Yay, I like laughter. But the beauty of astrology, I can make the point that the beauty of astrology is a great time management tool, because timing is everything. We know that, and I just made that point. So actually, this is how the sky looked at 9:15. The moon has actually shifted into the 8th house of, again, the occult. There's a different reference here. What, Zephyr?
I just want to say, my 8th house is very intense. It is in the occult, and I have Pisces in the 8th house.
Well, okay, so that's the thing, too. Now, if you got on the internet and you started Googling the 8th house, you might come across some fairly disturbing descriptions of this particular part of the sky. It's the house of birth and death and rebirth. But I do emphasize the rebirth part as well. But it's good for looking at hidden situations. The reason I got into astrology back in the late 60s, there was a lot going on in the late 60s. Those of you that weren't here, it's kind of hard to explain, but we were looking at, there was a real counterculture that was in effect at that time. And some of us in the counterculture wanted to get a little bit of edge on how to do things properly. I'll probably switch. We were doing certain things where the timing had to be just right, or it could have been disastrous. But in any case, in real astrology, that is the map of where the planets are in the sky right now. And knowing where all your planets are is a very important thing. It's quite nuanced. Yes. So that's also hard to see, but that slide says that Jupiter, the moving Jupiter in the sky right now, is in the constellation of Leo. In the constellation of Leo. So people that are born in the late summer, are probably benefiting from this. The sun actually was going through the constellation of Leo between August 17th and September 16th. So anybody here born in that?
Laura.
Yeah, I was born August 26th.
Yay, a true Leo. So theoretically, all right, so based on the concept that Jupiter is the planet of evolution, fortune, gain, wisdom, travel, honors, rewards, wealth, it's crossing over your sun, possibly some other planets too. Mercury and Venus travel close to the sun, so you might be getting you might be getting some added perks associated with this. But in a general way, when Jupiter is in the constellation of Leo, it would benefit your outer life, therefore your career. Or Sagittarians, it would benefit Sagittarians. Or Aries, people born in the spring. So, that's one thing. And then Saturn is in the constellation of Scorpio. So before we started here, Vani and I were laughing about this. She's Scorpio rising, so Saturn's in her first house. I said that was a maturing influence. That's code for not that much fun, possibly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I also have 5 planets in Scorpio too. So Scorpio, I mean, Saturn's going through all of these. But I'm having a ton of fun.
No, we don't. The concept of fun is typically mutually exclusive when we're looking at Saturn. But again, this makes the larger point that all of the planets, any planet doing anything in your chart at any given time is good for something. You probably already accept that basic idea. But in this case, the people born between November 17th and December 16th of any year are probably experiencing a very maturing effect. This actually also sort of, I don't mean to give you maybe this is too much information, but from its position in the sky, where Saturn is in Scorpio right now, it throws a backward influence onto the constellation of Leo. So Leo's got a real mixed message going on here. That there's expansion, but there's also some kind of, there could be quite a high price to pay for that. But my point is that there's a lot of nuances here. Astrology is obviously not just about your sun sign. Well, this is the point where I would stop and say, what would you most like to know about my opinion about something astrological? Is that okay? Is that okay to just ask this? I mean, we have an intimate group here. I think we have the luxury of making sure that I'm making the best use of your time to tell you something. Yes?
Okay, so I don't really know much about Vedic astrology, but Zephi and a couple other people looked at my Vedic astrology, and I have the absolute worst moon placement possible.
Worst?
Yes.
Oh, is that your definition?
It's in detriment.
Yeah.
It's not exalted, what she's saying.
Is it, okay, so your moon is in the constellation of Scorpio.
It is.
Yes, well, but that is
the
your...
worst.
No, okay.
Something else is in
Okay,
there.
I am so glad you're bringing this up.
I have the box. It's in the worst box in the box.
She got it.
No,
Okay.
there's no, okay, I want to, yes. So, no, for you, this is perfect. This is your style, to have a Scorpio moon. Please don't think of it that it's worst. Please don't think of it that way. Because it can't be worse for you, or why would you be incarnated in that? There is a point for all of this. Of course, this is a perfect sign for you. It might not be easy, but that does not mean that it's bad. This is a very good point. And you, again, this goes back to you'll read a lot of dreadful things about certain planets, like Scorpio. But this is perfect for you. So, are you a metaphysician? Are you an occultist? Are you?
Yes.
Okay, so that's who you actually are. That might not be what you do, but this is who you are internally. This is your job, is to look under rocks. Your job is anything that's forensic. Or you're supposed to revive the dead. So you first of all start... Well, again, I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, but I mean, I'm sort of saying this in a lighthearted way, but I'm actually very serious about that. This is your job, is to revive the dead. And the issue with Scorpio is that it's all about self-mastery. Because Scorpio is so powerful, nothing from the outside world can influence you. If you can manage your own emotions, yay. But this typically, isn't that typically the most difficult thing for anyone to do, is to manage their own emotions? Wouldn't you say that would be the number one difficult thing for anyone to do, is master their own emotions? That's why the moon, the planet of emotions, we know that now, is so difficult in Scorpio because it's almost too passionate. So it sounds like you're actually proud of having your moon in the worst position.
What's really interesting is that I never looked at it that way until someone I had talked to, such as yourself, let me know that. And then, I knew Zephy knew about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, really?
I just told her it wasn't exalted,
And
It wasn't exalted.
That's what I said. She was asking me, about
Nice politically correct.
But the person beforehand,
It's not
let me know
horrible, it's
was
just
really
awful.
badly placed,
Okay,
and it was going to be a problem for me. So I wanted to investigate that.
no.
Okay, I'm all down with what you said.
Yes, please do me.
Heck yeah, I'm coming.
Yes, and we have to be reality based here, but I would say, this is not easy, but if you put your attention or your habitual state of mind in the arena for concepts that Scorpio is the expert in, this all of a sudden makes your moon very happy and comfortable. So left to its own devices, no, it's true. The moon is not necessarily comfortable in the sign of Scorpio because it's too passionate. You can be too easily offended. But if you are doing something that along the lines we just commented on, then you are in your dharma. And this is the proper approach to astrology. There can't be anything good or bad because it appears in nature, right? This is not a government program to say, you are assigned a Scorpio moon. Too bad for you. So if it appears in nature, I think by definition that it cannot be bad. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Jill, and I don't know how important it is about balancing in the Vedic astrology. So for example, I discovered my moon is in Aquarius, my rising is in Aquarius, and my sign is Gemini.
Your sun?
The sign.
Are you born in the spring?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so what does that say?
Well, okay, so what that says to me is that everybody here will have a similar condition. You actually don't, Avani, forgive me for this, you actually don't want to have a bunch of planets clustered together necessarily, because typically a bunch of planets clustered together will make you a recluse. I have that too. We all can. So it's better to have so in your case, your sun is in the constellation of Gemini, and you said your moon is in the constellation of Aquarius, or something like that. Yeah,
rising, Aquarius, moon Aquarius.
Okay, well, so you have the moon in the first house. So you're a domestic goddess, right? No.
I don't know, now I'm all confused. All right, it's okay.
Well, I don't want you to be confused. I mean, that's actually the opposite of my intention here.
Yeah.
But I think your larger question, which could apply to everybody, is how important it is for balance. Yes, balance is the key to everything. Actually, even if you have 5 planets in Scorpio, God bless you. So, and here's the concept. We were just talking about this off the record before we started. Pamela was saying she has her moon in Taurus and Gemini rising, or something or sun in Taurus. And it's, the idea was, she was saying, I could be a bit stuck with a fixed sign and a bit, I don't know, multitasking with the Gemini rising. And I made the point that it's not either or. Any of these concepts are not mutually exclusive. It's both and. So, for instance, since both and, I should pause, so, yes. It's never either or, it is both and. Because there's planets flung out all over the place. If we go back to the concept, if we look at this, look, there's planets all over the place. The idea is to be conscious of using what your skill set is.
Right.
And therefore you will not be out of balance. So one of my favorite aphorisms, one of my favorite metaphysical aphorisms is that wisdom erases karma. Wisdom erases karma. So if, for instance, if somebody were born, an hour ago, these planets, this is a really intense karmic imprinting. This is a karmic imprinting. But when that person got old enough to have the wisdom that, oh yes, I'm born with Saturn and Scorpio in the first house, that they have the wisdom about that, that helps modify that type of karma. So if you know where your planets are, or when you know where your planets are, it will help keep that in balance, because the wisdom of knowing what your moon sign is or what your rising sign is, will help you. Doesn't really erase karma, but it modifies karma. But keeping things, and that is the way to keep things in balance. And then you honor all of the planets. It's like there are, in any fairy tale that we know about, there's always a bad fairy, right? There has to be a bad fairy. There has to be a bad fairy, because otherwise how would we know what the good is? So in this, just kind of caricaturing the planets, if we have to say the bad fairy is Saturn, because Saturn is the planet of hard work and expiating your own karma. Saturn just shows up to say, here's what you owe, here's what you owe. Pay up. I'm so delighted that you know that music.
The tax department.
Pardon me?
It's like the taxation, like IRS. Right.
Yeah, it could be like that. But it's a simple equation. You owe something, there's no free lunch. Saturn says, here, pay up. And it's not personal. Here's another thing about knowing what your planets are too, because it helps you objectify your own life. Where you might not be having so much fun, you might have ovarian cancer and think, well, rats, this is a bummer, but it's really not personal. You are just sort of playing things out in your planets, and if you keep them in balance, that's a very large idea. I know I'm sort of simplifying it, but it makes sense, I suppose, I hope. Yes, dance teacher.
I am interested in the correlation between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So that if you, like the Western astrology is here, and if in the Vedic astrology you go back, does all the Western thing shift back as well? Like it changes?
No.
Because you said the sun sign goes back
Yes.
one. What about the other things in the houses? Do they shift as well?
Everything shifts backwards.
Oh, it does.
Yes.
Okay.
We pick all of the 9 planets, just move everything backwards to where they actually literally are in the sky. But this makes another point, if I can make this point. So, astrology is brilliant. It is a sacred science. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever come across. And it really hurts my feelings that in the popular press, or as scientists, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, or the astronomers, they say astrology is just hogwash, because you're not even looking where the planets actually are. In Western astrology, they're talking about Western astrology. They're saying if you think you're, so right now, where are we? The sun is actually in the constellation of Libra, but Western astrologers would say that the sun is in the sign of Scorpio. And that's where I think Vedic astrology is more scientifically accurate in terms of measuring where the planets actually are in the sky. And you can see that yourself tonight if you wanted to. I'm a big advocate of creating a connection between you, between people and planets. So tonight, if you go out at twilight, especially around here, the sky is so clear, and after the sun sets, if you look into the western horizon, where the sun just went down, that is the western horizon, you can see the constellation of Scorpio. You cannot miss it, because it is vast, and there is one of the brightest stars in the sky, Antares. It flashes hot pink and lurid green. You just can't miss it. And if you knew what Saturn looked like you could see the planet Saturn in the constellation of Scorpio. And all the ancient traditions say that when the light of any planet strikes your retina, I mean, when you see it with your naked eye, you're creating a relationship between yourself and that planet. I mean, this is really serious practical metaphysics. So this morning, just one moment. So this morning, I got up remarkably early, and saw Venus in the, it was actually quite high before the, I mean, right, it was light when I was looking out. And so you can do this tomorrow. If you want to connect yourself with Venus, all right, so Venus has dominion over the feminine experience of creativity and relationships and joy and pleasure and happiness, security, comfort, creativity, all of these sorts of concepts. If you go out around sunrise, 6:30, something like that, if you look in the eastern horizon where the sun is about to rise, you can see quite high in the sky a brilliant light. That is the planet Venus. And if you look at this planet with some intention, I mean, what would your intention be? I mean, make anything up. I mean, I would hope that it would be a creative, positive intention. It just connects you with the energy of Venus to create something in your life. That's practical metaphysics.
What if you're looking at through a window?
Well, okay, but you're seeing the light from Venus.
So that still works. It's
Sure.
the intention you're talking about.
It is the intention.
It's the
You're not just
connection.
going, wow, that's groovy. I mean, you could just say that too. It's beautiful, it's stunning, it's amazing, it's far away, it means something, it's powerful. Venus in the eastern sky, it actually has a name. It's Venus Lucifer. Ooh. Lucifer means the light bringer. When it's in the evening, it's Hesperus. That's where we get the term Vespers. It has a different connotation when it's in the evening sky. You probably notice when you go out at night, you don't see any planets in the sky at sunset, except for Saturn. And Saturn is useful for something too. If you want to look at Saturn and define, Saturn, the planet with rings around it, is very good for setting boundaries. Boundaries are just as important as anything else either. If you want to, for instance, as a practical metaphysical concept, if you were to find out where Saturn is, and there's a beautiful app that will tell you this, you can probably see it for yourself. Saturn, if you looked at Saturn and were thinking to yourself that you wanted to invoke the energy of Saturn to help you create boundaries about something, around something. That's the key concept of boundaries. Because if we go a little bit further, if you create boundaries around something, and Saturn will now help you do that, this actually eliminates non-possibilities and helps you make choices. If you make a choice, obviously you are making choices about what will not happen as well. And Saturn is very good for that. Does that make sense? I mean, if it doesn't, please tell me, because again, it's my intention to be helpful here. But what were you going to comment on?
When you were talking about the planets being back a house or what have you.
About 3/4 of the time they are in this preceding sign.
Okay, so are you speaking about that being the difference between Western and Vedic or just Vedic? It's between Western and Vedic. It's the
Yes.
difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my other question, this is kind of twofold. When you're saying that in the Western, they're saying the sun is actually in Libra, but you're saying it's really about the constellation that the planet
Yes.
is in, not the sun sign.
Yes.
Okay.
Because all you're saying, okay, if in Western astrology they're saying that the sun is in the symbolic sign of Scorpio, because now we're about 8 months after springtime. That is the shortest version ever. But that's the essential issue. Western astrology is tied to the seasons. They're saying if it's spring, the sun must be in Aries. But actually, in the spring, the sun is in the constellation of Pisces. That just works that way. So anyway, if everybody got on board with that basic idea, then the astronomers won't be saying, oh, astrology is just hogwash, because you don't even know where the constellations really are. But that's just a personal thing. I mean, that's just... what else would you like to know about?
How do you get started if you don't know any of this?
Ooh. Anybody that signs up on for email, I'm not going to be sending you stuff, except I will send you this PowerPoint if you like. And in that, there's a resource list. And the resource list, there's all sorts of things here. Remedies, we have to talk about that. Mantras, we do need to talk about that too. Oh yeah, those gemstones. So the resources is, I mean, there's plenty of good material online. I would start my favorite book, is Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. You don't have to be a modern Western astrologer to understand that book, but I would get that book if I were you. James Braha is the author. It's really laid out. It says what the, yeah, I'm happy about that question. People should know whether, apparently we're all interested in metaphysics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing where your planets are is a really good symbol system. I mean, you know, knowing what your Ayurvedic mind-body type is really important. But figuring out what your, you know, what, this is so good for career orientation too. I had a lovely conversation with a young woman this morning. She was 26 years old. She said, I just don't know what to do, and what she wants to do. And astrology is very good for this. That's how you get, I think that's how you get started. So I'm an autodidact. I taught myself because there were no teachers around. So my orientation is, you're going to have to read the books anyway. So read the books, and then you'll find the teacher. Because you can't just start from scratch with a teacher, or can you? What do you think, Zephy? Well, you just happen to know
I think when the
everything.
student is ready, the teacher shows up, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
But if you've done your homework, but here's also the Jyotish star. Jyotish is the other word for, that would be the Hindu word for astrology. It means the science of light. Jyotish means the science of light. So the Jyotish star, that's a free, accurate newsletter. The Astro View by David Hawthorne, that's a free newsletter. It comes out every week, and it's oriented toward your rising sign. That's why you really need to know your rising sign. Oh, there's another thing that you could practice with. This Hora Watch app. It's the bottom entry there. You can put it in your phone. Tells you what's going on. Yeah, Zephy actually. I told Zephy about it a long time ago, and she actually showed me how to use the thing. Or you could, I'm a board member for the American College of Vedic Astrology online. You can take these courses online too, if you like. That's
Plus we have the Vedic Astrology Conference coming in November.
Oh, yes.
15th.
By the way,
19th, I can't remember the date.
in Sedona, Arizona, I just happened to know about, between November 19th and the 23rd of November, 3 weeks from now, there's a huge international conference right here. And even if you're a beginner, there will be a beginning astrology track. So how many people actually live in Sedona? Oh, well, gosh, that's fabulous. Well, I'll leave this out, but you can also Google this. I'm sorry to just be pushing it. I'm not just kicking the can down the road, but it's the Sedona Vedic Astrology.com. Sorry, don't tell Dennis that's not up here. But it's at the Poco Diablo Resort. Avani will be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too. Wow, it'll be like a reunion. I don't know how I am on time,
Do you have
Zephy.
time for another question? Or?
You've got another 10 minutes.
Okay,
So you
yeah,
can get all the
I
questions
I want to be useful. Yes.
The box that you were showing before, because I've had a Vedic astrology with Dennis, and there's all these different boxes that have Ratu and Raku and Rahu and
Rahu and Ketu.
Ketu. What can you explain? Like, show us the box and just show us how that relates to the signs in astrology, or
Are you really interested in that?
well, is
That's
it?
the North Node and the South Node
Oh.
and Western.
Oh,
But-
just the overall general blueprint of Vedic astrology, like.
Oh, just a simple overall
Yeah.
blueprint. God bless you. Are you ambitious?
In Australian Vedic.
Well, are you familiar? So, are y'all familiar essentially with Western astrology?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the short version. The houses mean essentially the same things in Western astrology. The houses, these boxes, these are areas in the sky.
Right.
They're about a 30-degree section of the sky. You know, this diagram here actually exists in real time outside. We could go outside and see that. If we went outside right now, or when we were dancing, The moon was over here in the western horizon. It was actually in the 8th house of occult and metaphysical and transformational activity. You can see these things in real time. This diagram actually occurs in the sky. So the houses are simply parts of the sky, and they translate they're probably about 80% coherent with Western astrology. The first house is the house of your physical body and your appearance and your personality and a bit about your temperament and your
You mean the
physical
sky as we
vehicle.
see it, or the sky all around the planet?
All the 360 degree
All around, okay, thank you.
orbit of the sky,
That's what
yes.
I want.
Even the sky that we can't see
That's
that's
what I wanted
below
to
the
ask.
surface.
Thank you.
Yes, there could be a planet, there's planets down below the Earth.
Yeah, that's good, thank you, that was good.
So the house is generally, the second house is the house of physical possessions, like it is in Western astrology. Except the beauty, the sophistication of Vedic astrology adds about another 57 different attributes to the second house. Okay, in Western astrology, the second house is the house of money, right? Pretty much the house of money, the end. That's just really too simplistic. Yes, it's the house of money, and it's the house of family life, and it's the house of food, and it's the house of clothes, and it's the house of words, and a lot of other things. Only the second house. In this particular chart, the second house is the lower left-hand corner. So, but I have some other things to tell you now
Yeah,
that it's okay.
that's good, that's plenty, because the overall, that's plenty.
Yeah,
overall, thank you.
they don't contradict themselves. The 10th house in Western astrology is the house of career. It's the same here. But it's the house of a lot others. It's the house of holy pilgrimages and some other nuances too. It gets really quite fascinating. But I wanted to show you some other, this is too technical. But I will email all of you this PowerPoint presentation, and then you can see the exact correlation, the differences between the Western houses. So, for instance, I just said the 10th house also means holy pilgrimages and good deeds which benefit society. These are specific things or concepts. These are funny. Remedies. Now here, I could have started with this, but I didn't, so here we are. Now, so astrology is so talking about this lady's Scorpio moon. Okay, it's fine, okay, you have a Scorpio moon. Boo-hoo, too bad, it's the worst. But there is thank you for laughing, but there are remedies for where your planets are to strengthen them. And there's a whole, I mean, this could be an entirely different lecture, but the idea is that you can do something about your planets. You don't just have some planets and, like I said, boo-hoo, or yay. You can strengthen strong planets, you can strengthen weak planets. You can do something about these. And that's why this says simple remedies for planetary afflictions. Let's just use this poor darling woman back here with me has the Scorpio moon. So she has an afflicted moon. You could chant mantras for your moon, right? Now I think that chanting mantras is the most effective remedy for a weak planet. I'll show you what these mantras are. And then we'll go back to this. Mantras to strengthen planets. So this lady, if she wanted to strengthen her poor, debilitated moon, she would chant Om Som Somaya Namaha. So, not knowing what your planets are, I mean, these are spelled phonetically, and I'll PowerPoint these to you. I mean, I'll email these to you. So, for instance, at the beginning of this session, at the beginning of this lecture, because Saturn was in the first house, we could have honored Saturn by chanting, also after the Ganesh mantra, chanting the seed mantra for, the simple mantra for Saturn is Om Sham Shanishacharya Namaha. That means Shani. Shani is the word for Saturn, and Acharya means teacher. Saturn is a teacher, right, Avani?
Yeah.
Even if you do not, this is like your trigonometry teacher, or that's my bias against math. Your hardest subject teacher. The hardest subject teacher. It's an Acharya, it's a teacher. So you want the teachings from Shani. But okay, so you can chant mantras to support your planets, right, Zephy?
Yes.
Or meditation. Meditation is across the board remedy for almost anything, right? Because you get your own self-reference. No matter what's going on in the outside world, or even no matter what's going on with your planets, if you're in contact with your higher self through meditation, that's like a 90% remedy for anything. Selfless service. Also fasting. Fasting is really powerful. Did you guys talk about that at all in this conference?
We're talking about closing that. And I've
Yeah.
talked about the moon, but we're talking about
Fasting on the day of your chart lord. So, for instance, for Gemini rising, you have Gemini rising. That's associated with the planet Mercury. Mercury's day is Wednesday. You could fast on Wednesday. Not fast from, I'm not giving you medical advice, and if your blood pressure gets too low, then don't fast. But there could, even a partial fast. And then my favorite, because it's easy, gemstones, yay. That's why you see Vedic astrologers are running around there, I've got all these gemstones on them. So, yes. So today, if you had today's Sunday, you could wear rubies. That's why I'm wearing rubies today. Zephy's wearing rubies today. It's not, or there are secondary gemstones too. One of the few good things about becoming an old lady is usually you've got some disposable cash to buy gemstones. Real ones. So, here we go. So you could strengthen any planet by wearing its appropriate color. So today is ruby red, or think of Zephy's pantaloons, that color. I'll send this to you so you'll have this information. And it's not like you have to wear certain colors on certain days, but the general idea of doing mantras or wearing gemstones for your afflicted planets or weak planets or strong planets is that you're intentionally putting yourself in harmony with that planet. And it's the sympathetic magic that you can do some of these things to remind you, to make you more intentional. Because you know what the word cosmos means? Cosmos, right? It means order. So you are in order, the intention is for conscious people is to be in order with their planets. And I think that's particularly true for women. I guess I'll kind of wrap it up in this way and say, even though we are living in the year 2015, good Lord, women are still being sort of undervalued, weirdly. Right? We don't get equal pay for equal work. There's still a lot of violence toward women, or women are being diminished. And it's, in certain places and conditions. So, in order to strengthen ourselves as individual people, I think one of the most interesting ways to do that is to know what your planets are, because your own planets are for you. And if you figure out how to use the skill set that's donated by where the planets were when you were born, you get a real inside track on something. So, gosh, I hope that makes sense.
Yes.